Welcome back to Power to Win. I'm your host, Kyle, and today's episode and this month's theme is all about innovation, but not the buzzword version of innovation. We're talking about the kind of innovation that has to perform under pressure, the kind that matters when a hospital, manufacturing plant, business, home, farm, or critical facility needs power and cannot afford failure. Today, I'm joined by Charlie Habic, president and owner of Gillette Generators. Charlie has been in the generator industry for nearly 4 decades, and he has had a front row seat to see how this industry has changed, from product design, customer expectations, to emissions, controls, manufacturing, fuel sources, and the growing demand for reliable power. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Charlie, first, I'd like to start with your story. How did you first get into the generator industry?
Well, my dad bought Gillette Generators in 1972 from a gentleman by the name of Paul Gillette, thus the name. And at that time, I thought every kid's dad owned a generator company. I didn't know any different. So that was the first time I ever saw a generator, was in 1972. I was 12 years old.
Wow, that's awesome. When he bought the company, were you envisioning this to turn into your lifelong career, or is it kind of something that just, ended up growing?
It was, my dad didn't have much regard for child labor laws in the state of Indiana. So as teenagers, and not quite at age 12, but we got up to 14, 15, 16 years old, we worked at the company. We went to school, and then we, got out of school at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and we'd go to Gillette and work for a couple hours, and we'd go home and have dinner. And that was the expectation. And we get to homework later. So that was the pattern, the cadence for many, many years.
Wow. When you first started at Gillette, in your younger years, what were you doing for them?
Well, it would be just basic, safe, assembly. And, then we got into actually building generators. But remember, these were small rope pull type generators, Briggs and Stratton engines, a little 5 kilowatt, 7 kilowatt. That was the origins of the company. It was just the rope pull type gasoline portable generators. When my father bought the company, we had 2 or 3 products, and I think a half a dozen customers.
Oh, wow.
And that was the real raw origins of the company. And by 1978, I think that we did $1 million a year in sales. That was a big threshold at that point in time.
Wow.
There's a picture somewhere of a cake on the conference room table and all the employees in there clapping and celebrating that big threshold as far as the sales go.
That's amazing. I bet it's been quite amazing to see that growth coming from those smaller gens to now you guys are selling, the larger 2 megawatt generators. That's amazing. And what for the growth of the company? How small was it back then? How many people did you have, and what was the size of the facility?
Yeah, just a small 20,000, 15,000 square feet rented building, couple key employees. And of course, but the key was my father. He's a self-made guy, Indiana conservative businessman, but really had a knack for figuring out complex engineering tasks. And he designed a 2-pole, 3,600 RPM generator head that would bolt up to the Briggs and Stratton engine. And I'm talking, the rotor stator laminations, the shaft is a tapered shaft, male, female type connection. And he designed a 12-stage progressive die to stamp the laminations. Very complex undertakings. Can you consider that thing's turning at 3,600 RPM? You got to get all those dimensional concentricities nailed down, and very tight tolerances. And he was able to do that. And that's without any degree from mechanical school of engineering. That's the school of entrepreneurship, of the school of hard knocks.
Right. I was just about to ask you, was he an engineer? Because that absolutely sounds like an engineering background. And even if he doesn't have an engineering degree, he definitely has that engineering background to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I think he figured out in the Army. He was stationed in Germany in the mid-50s, kind of in a post-World War II, when they had a lot of troops there, kind of in a policing type base that kept an eye on, what was going on. Of course, the Cold War was starting in that area. But anyway, he realized he had a knack for electromechanical type task in specific to tanks. He worked on a lot of tanks and troubleshooting in the field to get them back up and running. And that's kind of where he cut his teeth. That led to the power generation industry.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, we have some tankers of our own at Power Champions. I know that you know a couple of them. They're a different breed in themselves. So
Oh, I mean, the military has been a tremendous training ground for our industry. And there's military people from the Coast Guard and Army, Navy, all over our industry. So it's a good, I don't know if you call that a feeder route as opposed to going to engineering school. You can certainly pick up a lot of skills,
yep,
in the various branches of the military.
that's awesome. And you also get that. I think you hit it on the head when you're saying the school of hard knocks. You get that wherewithal to kind of make things happen no matter the circumstances, and the ability to get things done even when things aren't your way. So I know Gillette, it sounds like your dad was like that, and I know you guys are always scrappy and doing your best to always meet customer needs, which is one reason why we love partnering with you guys. So hats off to you guys with that. So getting into your early start in there, when you first were getting started, what were some of the early lessons that helped shape you think about this business?
Well, like I mentioned a moment ago, I think that conservative Indiana, it's in the blood, right? When you're from Indiana, that conservative business mindset. We don't want to borrow any money. We're going to, buy this new building or maybe buy a new piece of machinery, but we want to make sure that we have cash on hand to fund that. That was always one of the real guiding principles of the early days. And I carried that for many, many years in the company. But I think, hard work is certainly a key factor. But then there's also a strong determination, uh, what I always call the fear of failure. That's a tremendous motivator. Like I don't want to, make mistakes here and not give this my best shot, because if I don't, it's we got the failure on the horizon. We got failure on the horizon, and that we couldn't let that happen. So I think that's a great motivator for a small business owner. It's just that fear of failure.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there too. I mean, fear of failure is, you said it is, as long as you give it your best shot, then that fear of failure kind of goes a little bit away, because you're giving it your everything, and then you're not really failing, but you're learning, right? So that's a really great point for all small business owners when you're growing. I mean, you've seen this industry for a long time. You've been in it for almost 4 decades. When you compare the generator business then versus now, what are the biggest changes that you've seen?
Well, I think from a customer lens, I think it's the same as it was in the '70s. Customers want a good product, and they want good support. You make a great Cadillac, but if you don't, stand behind it, you got big problems coming around the corner.
Absolutely.
But I think also customers want a relationship. Customers don't necessarily want an 800 number when there's a problem. They don't necessarily want an app. Go to my app for a solution. I don't see that in the cards at Gillette Generators. I've always said you can call me on a Saturday, a Sunday. I think we have numerous key employees that have the same mindset. So we're standing by, and you got to pick up the phone when a customer calls. We don't want to languish away in an email. We don't want to, be dodgeballing customers. We have to support the customer, build a good product, and then support that product and that customer.
I love that. Yeah, breaking it down to the simple ethos of product and service. And we're in a relationship business, and you guys have thrived on building those relationships. I know anytime anybody from your team, I need something, they're on just the other side of the phone, and every time it's answered. So even yourself, Ryan, Courtney, your whole team is just
I would hope so.
so they are. So it definitely comes down from the top. Um, do you feel that customers today are more educated due to apps, AI, than they used to be, or do you think that's kind of making them feel more confident, but not necessarily more educated?
Well, I think that would definitely think customers are more educated. I mean, it's so easy to jump online and analyze not just our company, but every one of our key competitors. I mean, I look at I look at 9 companies out there. You got, of course, the 5 leaders. You got CAD, Cummins, Kohler, MTU, and Generac. And then I call it the mid 4. You got ourselves, Gillette, Blue Star, Taylor, and High Power.
Mm.
And so when you talk about educated, it's there's no mysteries on how to build a good generator, really. We're all using world-class engines in that group of people I just mentioned, world-class generator heads, controls, circuit breakers. All these companies have, fairly robust enclosures. But what's the difference maker, right? I mean, the difference maker could be lead time, the support, we touched on that. Um, some of the differences are intangible.
Yep.
But when you look at those 9 companies, all make pretty good products. I mean, I can't sit here and, they always say, "Oh, you shouldn't knock a customer." Well, or excuse me, a competitor. And I kind of agree with that, but every now and then we'll maybe throw a stone or two. But it's really hard to do that at these companies because they're all, you know, been in the industry a long time and bring to the market a good product.
Yep.
So you go back to the original question, are customers educated? I think very much so. When it comes to, who's strong here, and that's the other thing. Some of our competitors could be a little stronger, say on a 200 kilowatt gas, and then you come over here to an 800 kilowatt gas, we might be a little stronger. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses in the product line. Even the big corporate behemoths, they have some gaps that maybe we can jump into and offer a solution. So,
Yep. Absolutely. No, I think you hit it spot on. So many of those companies, they all have been in the industry and do it so well. And they all have their strengths, right? With you guys, I always see one of your strengths not only being name brand components that you use, but you hit it spot on too with lead times. Your guys' lead times, compared to others, are industry leading. How are you guys able to keep all your lead times so competitive? I mean, I I know that we quoted, I think it was a 100, and it was like a 3 to 4 week lead time, which my customer was almost worried was too fast.
too fast. Well, but there's one key to that, and that's just the courage of stock engines.
Mm.
And everything else you can get in a reasonable time period, the housing, the generator head, the breaker, the controller, the exhaust system. So that engine becomes the key to the lead time. And we've had a couple things that, remember the 2022 supply chain challenges that kind of opened our eyes to, well, we need to get more engines on the floor just in case something like that happens. So we started really stocking at an accelerated rate. And then we realized, hey, this is working out pretty good as far as trimming into our lead time. As a Caterpillar and, some of these other large companies, MTU, eat up their production time with a large data center project. Maybe their lead times are becoming very, very long for below 1 megawatt, and thus we can jump in and help with that. So I think when you think about that, I think the way the data center challenges have really impacted Gillette Generators in that way, where some of these dealers that would normally go to the big companies who are coming to us because they just can't get the product from because they're, again, preoccupied with data center business.
Wow. I know those are great points. And I think that, you said it, you said that the courage to stock, the engines. And I think it's the courage to bet on yourself and to bet on your company and know that you guys are going to, have these engines to sell, and then you're going to move the product, and then, focusing on all the other, noise, not chasing the elephants. That's a really good strategy. And the fact that you guys were able to shift that from COVID and turn something that was negative into a positive that, became a strategic advantage for you is really impressive. So that's all.
And I think another factor on that in that regard is, being backed by private equity. We have a private equity partner
Mm.
that we partnered up with in 2021. And, these companies have deep pockets, they have cash they want to deploy. And we had this discussion. This wasn't, just a casual conversation. This was a strategic decision for the company. And the private equity folks, all right, let's deploy this money in working capital, and we really think this will help grow the company. And it's worked, and it'll continue to work. So we're now stocking for gas engines up to 200 kilowatt, which is a 40 kilowatt, 60 kilowatt, 100, 150, 200 kilowatt. And on the diesel side, we stock all the way up to 1 meg. And this involves Mitsubishi engines, Volvo engines, John Deere, Perkins. And then, if you have a diesel engine, that's nice, but you still got to have a tank. So, so that means to be aggressive with lead times, you got to stock tanks as well. It's a big commitment, but that translates into being able to deliver with a reasonable lead time. And now the bigger irons, say a 2 meg diesel, we'll get an order, and then of course place that order, and lead time grows dramatically. So the bigger the unit, the lead time will stretch out a little bit. But that's a core strategy of the company, and I think we're going to stick with that for a long, long time.
It's working for you guys, so I definitely move from that. If it ain't broken, then I would try and fix it. No, that's amazing. So our theme for this month is innovation. What are the biggest innovations that you've seen over your career in the generator industry?
Well, the product continually evolves. I don't think that the wherewithal and the engineering ingenuity to make a standby generator ever is complete. It's the mouse trap can always be improved. And that's the way I've always looked at it, and the way that we look at it currently. A good example, what's a good example of that? Say the weather protected enclosures, for example. We've revised these numerous times over the last 20, 30 years, and the goal is very simple. And that's how would we build this enclosure to increase the protection for the engine and the generator? That's its basic responsibility, the enclosure, right, is to protect the engine's generator. But also, how can we retool it and build it and look at it through a slightly different lens to reduce noise, reduce sound, get better sound attenuation out of that housing? So these are the type of things when you talk about innovation. That's just one example. Is we're actually going through a pretty good undertaking now for our larger kilowatt systems in regard to the enclosure. Try to beef them up a little bit more and get a little sound, a little reduction in sound in that regard. I think that when you look at decibel reduction and sound attenuation, that's something that with some additional air dams and additional acoustical padding, that type of thing, there's always gains that can be made there. Maybe, play with the silencers a little bit. There's things you can do to make the generator perform, and then have a little less noise in that process, which, people love backup power, but they don't always love the sound problems that come with that, particularly in large urban areas.
Yep. I think, yeah, it's spot on. We, our industry is continuously being tested, and it's all of our units are being pressure tested by, the grid being, having more electrification on it, where people are throwing more loads, everything. They want to get rid of gas stoves, they want electric cars, and we're continually having to innovate, and, try to move with the times as well. So great points there. I think when you look back more so recently, like over the last 10 to 15 years, what do you think, other than sound, have you seen that's changed the most? I mean, is it the larger kW size that's coming in, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, the compliance side of things is probably the biggest. For example, we can go back to enclosures. We have a 200 mile an hour wind load rated enclosure, which normally gets it done as far as meeting specifications all across the country, except for South Florida. And in South Florida, for many applications such as healthcare or critical life safety, then you got to bring in the missile impact rated enclosures, which we're working on right now. I think that's a good example of to follow up on your question. But the compliance, say on fuel storage. In the old days, UL 142 tank would get it done for most areas, and now California has a regional code. Dallas has a a city code. Of course, New York City has the New York City rooftop code, and Long Island has the Suffolk County code, the King County code, the Nassau County code, Florida, FTEP fuel storage code, Michigan, Michigan DEQ code, and this all gets into venting and spill containment and alarm systems and that type of thing. The dealer really has to be aware of that, because as a factory, we know of the majority of the important codes around the country, but then every now and then a new one pops onto the scene that the engineers are specifying, and we may not be aware of that.
Yeah. When you were talking about the codes and compliance, you kind of gave me a flashback of the air permitting. All right, Charlie, how do you keep a team focused on both innovation and fundamentals?
Well, you look at the company values. I think number one, we got obsession with the customer. We want to obsess over the customer. If you obsess over the customer, that means you obsess over the inventory, you obsess over the employees, you obsess over your vendors, you obsess over everything. So we talk about that all the time with our staff and our employees. We're going to obsess. We're going to have a customer obsession. You have a customer obsession, and I think that's a good driving value for the company. And also, we want to have a bias for action, right? We're not going to just sit around in meetings and talk about things. We're going to be on the factory floor, and we're going to be in the customers' offices. We're going to be talking to customers and also taking action on the plant floor, a bias for action. Another key value is we want to be reliable people. We want to be somebody you can count on. We want to be somebody that says we're going to deliver December 1st, 500 kilowatt. Then you don't want to have us call up on Thanksgiving and say, "Oh, it looks like it's going to be early February." That is not a reliable partner. Another key value with the company, I think, I think it's important to be frugal. We want to be frugal. We want to keep one eye on the operation to make sure that we come to the market with a competitive product. I mean, we can make a beautiful generator, but if we don't keep one eye on the competitive ability, guess what? We don't have much of a business. So you gotta keep an eye on your ability to be competitive in the marketplace. But all companies sit around and talk about goals, and I want to build 20,000 widgets this month, and okay, multiply it times 12. That's X amount per year. But to me, there's one big goal, and the big goal is ongoing performance improvement. I want to do a little bit better tomorrow than I did today. I want to do a little bit better next week than we did this week. To me, that's the goal. You ask me what the goal is for 2026, I would say ongoing performance improvement. Now, don't get me wrong. We got a budget. We got every number, written down what we think we'll do, and certainly our management, our equity partners want to see that. But to me, the goal is ongoing performance improvement. We want to do a little bit better, on that generator we're going to build on Monday than we did the generator we're going to build on Friday. Got to keep getting better, keep getting better. So I think those are some important values. But then there's another big one. We like to reward employees. We want to make sure that the performance of the employees is rewarded. I mean, we have generator technicians making, 150 grand a year, 140 grand a year, test technicians making a serious six-figure salary. And these are long-standing Gillette employees, but it makes it, it's a source of pride for me to have employees to be compensated at that level. And the reason I say this is because they've earned that. These are long-standing Gillette employees. If we walk around the factory, there's 20-year people everywhere. We have wiring technicians that they can memorize the print for a 2-meg Mitsubishi, and then next day wire a 200 kilowatt John Deere, because they've been doing it so long. They have I'm talking about the DC wiring harness. The schematic is they have it memorized. They can just go from unit to unit. And that is tremendous value, if you can imagine. for that skill level of a wiring technician. So those are some of the values that I would think are very important to Gillette Generators.
I think those are amazing values, and they come from start from, like you said, breaking it down to the simplest things of improving every day, obsess about your product and your customer. And those are all the reasons are why we love working with you. And anybody that's watching this podcast should reach out to Gillette Generators whenever they have a generator need, because they're going to get met with the best quality people, the best service, and the most efficient response. Which is why we, like I said, love partnering with you guys on all of our generator projects. So one last question for you. Advice to someone younger who's coming into the industry, other than, breaking it down to these little, getting better every day, just, keeping your goals in front of you. What would be your best advice or skills that matter most in the industry for someone coming in?
Well, I love seeing young people in our industry because there's a lot of old guys like me roaming around, and we need young people like yourself. We need kids in their 20s. We all know there's a deficit in regard to technicians. But I would think for, say, just a management employee or a sales employee coming in the industry, I would say, as far as advice, don't be afraid to take a couple risks. Like, for example, if you get offered a promotion that you may think, well, maybe this isn't a promotion. Maybe I can't handle it. Maybe I'll fail. No, no, no. Take that risk. Take that risk. Take that job and give it everything you got. Get up early, stay late, come in on Saturday morning and take that risk, because you never know. Once the boss offers you a job, you have to take it.
Yep.
And you never know where that's going to lead you. But if you don't take it, I can tell you exactly where it's going to lead you. It's going to lead you, probably about where you are right now.
Right.
So that's important. But also for young people, I think that, build your communication skills, your written skills, your verbal skills. I think sometimes, don't get me started on this topic, but I think sometimes cell phones has maybe held some young people back on communication skills in certain ways, which is, could be a problem. So you got to have good communication skills if you're in the business world, and be reliable. And the other thing I think is very important is protect your reputation. If you're going to be in the power generation industry, everybody knows everybody. It's not a massive industry. It's about 40 billion. So we get to know each other, and you have to have a good reputation as somebody you can trust and be reliable. So that's what I would tell young people. But I'd also say, let's get some more young people in this industry. We need good, young, talented people.
Absolutely. And I love how those advice that you just gave. It's, if you get the opportunity, take it. Don't be scared. There's Richard Branson that said, if someone offers you a job and you don't know if you can do it, take it. Now, 80% of people are out there doing what you want to do just because they decided to try. And then, protecting your reputation, working hard. Those are all the values that I think of Gillette when I hear those, and that's what you guys are built upon, are those exact values, why you guys have been successful in the industry for so long. So thank you so much, Charlie, for coming on today. It's been an pleasure having you. Thankful for having you on today, and we look forward to continuing to work with you guys in the future. And if anybody needs a Gillette generator, please go to GilletteGenerators.com and get your quote today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye-bye.